and we try to stay with them and to maximize our returns, because it is when the market is trending, this is where we need to be in. These are the times we need to be in the market, when the market is trending. So with that said, we will start doing our the dollar. We start with the indices as we always do, and this is the dollar index, and we will see there are really some nice or important setups. When I say nice, I mean technically nice, important setups that are being set up in the market. This is the chart for the dollar index, and what we had during the last week until maybe Friday, if you look at this is the weekly chart. Just hold on, please. If you look at, as I said, this is the weekly chart, and you can see that we had this kind of like at the beginning of a sell-off. So if I put the daily chart, you would see that the dollar has been kind of declining or easing up a little bit in the last 3 or 4 sessions, but it's still intact. The trend, the upward trend, is intact. Everything is lining up, and all this what happened during the last week was not really a sell signal. It was more of a pause, if you will. There was a lot of economic news coming out. There was a lot of events happening here in the United States as well as in Europe. But you see that on Thursday we had this push to the downside in the US dollar, and then on Friday we had the turnaround, that what you see there. And if I go back again to the weekly chart, you could see that we do now have a buy signal in the US dollar. The trend, as I said, is to the upside. All what we had was a 1 week pause, and that candle that you see on the weekly chart has generated a buy signal. This is a dollar buy signal. On the daily, chart, you can see that we had a nice move to the upside, and we have a normal close. We closed the week at 83.57. That is a good close for the week, and it's an indication that the dollar should continue in its upward move. The other pairs that were strong from last week, and if you can see it right here on the chart, we were looking at the Australian dollar as being strong, right there. And we were looking at the yen as being strong. This is the summary of last week. And we were looking at the Swiss to be really weak, the pound kind of neutral, and the euro to be weak. So just to continue on this theme that or the outline that happened from last week, as you can see, the dollar, we were neutral on it, and that was the outcome, because again it ended positive, but the decline was not a genuine sell, but rather a pullback. The other strong pair was the Australian dollar, and this is the chart for the Aussie. And putting on the weekly chart, you can see that we closed the week at 103.20. We are pretty much close to the high. The Australian on the weekly is still strong, and our close is still above the selling points. We really don't have at this moment a sell signal on the weekly chart. But if we go down to the daily, the picture is slightly different. And the difference here is that the Australian dollar is a fundamentally strong currency. It is one that pays interest, and there is some fundamental stuff that is supporting the Australian dollar, primarily the shortage of grain that's happening across the world, particularly in the United States. So that should be supportive to the countries that are part of the breadbasket, and that is Australia and Canada. But in the interim, the Australian has been kind of losing momentum on the way up. So that loss of momentum, we're still maintaining the positive bias. We're going to still hold the Australian dollar, but we're going to keep an eye now at the selling points. If you look at this chart here, you can see that the 103.80, the 103.08 was the beginning of the decline that started way back on April the 40th of this year. It was also, we had quite a decline when the market traded below that back in September 2011. So this area is quite significant. So we are going to stay with it on the long side. And as you can see, on Friday we came all the way down just at the 103.07, and we held, and then we had this little bounce. So what this will do, we will keep us positive to neutral on the Aussie. And if we do break below the 103.80, and we're going to see the equivalent number on the cash, we're going to see if we can take a short. If you look at the Swiss franc, this is one of the currencies that, as I said, is in a nice momentum. It is considered now, it is in a downward trend. It is considered in a bear market. We closed the week at 101.57. That's based on the index. And this is rather significant because, as you can see here, we have two structural points. One second, guys, somebody just... It is still directed to the US dollar. The only thing that is flying right now is the grains. That's the wheat. That is the soybeans. That is the corn. That is the soybean meal. And I'm showing you this so that you can understand what is supporting the Australian dollar and what is supporting the US dollar. These are the two big brass baskets in the world. There's a lot of demand coming in to buy basically bread and food. And with that, there is nothing that's supporting these currencies. The Australian, for example, in gold, they produce gold. They produce copper. So nothing, and aside than just the interest rate that's coming out, the primary reason is right now that we have is the U.S. stock market is being bought, and basically the grains. So therefore, the way we're going to set up our plan this week is as follows. We're going to be looking at, in this case, buying the US dollar. So the US dollar is going to be strong, so we're buying the US dollar. The yen is also quite strong. The Aussie, we're going to keep it as neutral to positive in the same way. And the weak ones are the euro and the Swiss. These are the primary two weak ones that we. And the pound, we are going to be slightly neutral to slightly positive on it for this week. Once the big thrust of visitors come in to the United Kingdom, I would probably perceive that the pound to begin its slide to the downside. And the Canadian, again, is slightly positive to neutral. So having said that, we're going to looking at buying the dollar and selling the euro. We're going to be buying the dollar Swiss, and we're also going to be looking at the euro Aussie, shorting the euro Aussie, shorting the euro Swiss. We're going to be taking the pound euro, so I'm shorting the euro pound, and we're looking at buying the pound Swiss. So we'll buy the dollar Swiss, the Aussie Swiss, the pound Swiss, and we're going to buy the CAD Swiss. We're going to be selling the euro Aussie, buying the pound Swiss, the euro pound is also a short, and we're going to look at the euro CAD and CAD Swiss. Last but not least is the yen. The yen is in a powerful mode. It is in an uptrend. It is continuing to push higher. It is the strongest currency in the world today, fundamentally and technically. And therefore, this strength in the yen should continue. And therefore, we are looking at we're going to be looking at shorting the dollar yen, shorting the Aussie yen, shorting the pound yen, and shorting the CAD yen, the Swiss yen, and the euro yen. Okay? So we're looking, again, I just want to, so we're looking at buying the dollar, buying the Aussie, buying the pound. We're shorting the euro, we're shorting the Swiss, and we're going to go long the Japanese yen. We might stay slightly away from the dollar yen simply because the dollar is now pushing higher, so we can focus the yen either with the pound or with the Swiss. I mean, this would be a good pair. The Swiss yen would be a good pair. The euro yen would be a good pair to go short. And maybe the CAD yen and the pound yen. All right? So let me save the recording and